Now, to take us through the wash-up of the Bennelong by-election as well as the highlights and lowlights of the year in politics, we're joined by Paul Fletcher, Minister for Urban Infrastructure, and Labor's Shadow Minister for Employment Services, Ed Husick. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Paul Fletcher, the word I'm seeing and hearing most from your side in regards to this result is relief. Is that a fair description?
Look, it's a great outcome for the people of Bennelong. It's a great outcome for John Alexander, who's worked so hard. He's been such an effective local member. And it's a good outcome for the people of Australia because, of course, we maintain a majority government. It's a poor outcome for Bill Shorten, who really raised expectations about what he might be able to do here. But the reality is the swing in this Bennelong by-election was less than the average swing against governments. There's always a swing against governments in a by-election, but this was less than the average. And of course, that's even before the postal votes have been counted, and the postal votes typically favour the Liberal Party. So a good result, very good result for Malcolm Turnbull and the Coalition, very poor result for Bill Shorten, who raised expectations and once again talked a big game but couldn't deliver.
It's undeniable that there was that swing, though. Bill Shorten says that's a sign of things to come.
Look, Bill Shorten and Christina Keneally have been desperately spinning this result. It's a poor result for them. And Bill Shorten is obviously worried about his position within the party and what his party room will be thinking about this, what the caucus will be thinking about this. Look, clearly he mishandled the whole issue of Sam Dastyari and he dithered over Dastyari, didn't take action. Dastyari himself announced his resignation. Of course, he's still going to be on the public payroll for another 8 weeks, and of course Bill Shorten has misplayed this whole citizenship issue by assuring Australians that Labor's vetting processes were secure. What we actually know is that the Coalition has conducted itself with integrity when it emerged that Barnaby Joyce and John Alexander inadvertently had dual citizenship. They resigned, they've gone to by-election, they've won those by-elections, they're back, we have a majority government, whereas Mr Shorten has been concealing the fact that several Labor members have serious questions about dual citizenship. A number of them were British citizens at the time that they nominated.
Ed Husick, are you disappointed with the result? The polling was suggesting it was going to be a very tight race. As it turns out, Labor got the swing of around 5%, but clearly not enough.
Well, let's be clear about this. As much as the Coalition wants to celebrate, if we can get in a safe Liberal seat this kind of swing, there'll be a lot of Liberal MPs bookmarking seek.com as their new favourite website because they'll be looking for new work. We could potentially see a massive surge at a federal election.
But it's a by-election. We always see this in a by-election when the swing against the incumbent or certainly the sitting government.
Like I said, a swing this big in a safe Liberal seat that they were supposed to win, this is big. And the only reason that they could win was that they had a federal Liberal Party picking up state Liberal campaigning techniques, dusting off a 2011 playbook to attack Christina Keneally. They had no ideas, they had no plan, they had no clue for what they would do in Bennelong. And you've seen the result that we've had. And I think this has been a tremendous result for Christina. We had 10% we had to try and pull back out of this seat. We needed someone with the strength and the talent of Christina Keneally in as a candidate to transform the race, which it did. Christina ran a very positive, local-focused campaign, and you saw the result, a massive swing to Labor.
It was local-focused, but of course federal issues would have come into it, particularly given that both the party's leaders were very present on the campaign and we had the Dastyari affair during the campaign. Surely that wasn't good for Christina Keneally.
Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We did have scrappy moments over the last few weeks that would have distracted, and to suggest otherwise is just treating the viewers with disrespect. But we did get through those periods, and we did on the back of a very solid local campaign by Christina. I think she did a fantastic job. And the other side threw everything at her. They set out websites, they bought websites just to launch negative smear campaigns against her. They tried to bring up everything from former time as a Premier. They had no idea or no clue what to offer the people of Bennelong, so they just went negative. And this will be the longer term problem for the Liberal Party. They don't have a forward-looking policy platform. The most movement you get out of this government is retreat. You don't have a solid platform of ideas for the future. And Labor, I think, looking into 2018, will be setting again the policy agenda because we're thinking ahead. We don't have to go negative all the time.
Well, Paul Fletcher, let's take Ed Husick's point there. If this swing was translated in a general election, you would lose government. He's suggesting it would be around 25 seats, perhaps, that could change hands. You're still behind as far as the polls are concerned. You still need to make up ground. Malcolm Turnbull still faces this criticism. Well, let's assume the election is not next year, but the year after. How are you going to turn things around?
Well, look, Labor invited the people of Bennelong to send a message to Malcolm Turnbull. The message they sent was, please keep doing the job you're doing, because as well as contesting by-elections, dealing with issues of citizenship and the other things that come up, what the Turnbull government has been doing in 2017 is getting on with the job. You know, we're delivering almost 1,000 jobs a day. Every Australian who comes into a job means they can provide for their families. It means hope and opportunity. So we're delivering almost 1,000 jobs a day. We've got the package
just on that point, though, do you feel as though your message has been significantly distracted? Of course, we had the same-sex marriage. That's now gone through. And, of course, the citizenship.
A reform delivered by Malcolm Turnbull. But look at some of the other reforms that Malcolm Turnbull has delivered in 2017. Profound changes to the funding of school education. We're going to spend over $23 billion more on school education over the next 10 years. Average per student funding up around 50% over 10 years. Now, lots of people said we wouldn't be able to get those changes through the Senate. We did it. Labor opposed vigorously our reforms to education, even though David Gonski, the man whose name they've been championing for several years, stood up next to the Prime Minister and endorsed these changes. Look at the changes that we're making to make sure Australians stay strong and secure. We're bringing together a number of important agencies like the Australian Federal Police and ASIO into a Home Affairs Ministry. And we just introduced legislation last week to deal with the issue of foreign political donations and foreign influence in our political system, while Labor, on the other hand, had Senator Dastyari standing up, mouthing the lines of the Chinese government and taking money personally from a foreign donor. Not a campaign donation, but personal money.
Given all that, given the win in New England and now the win in Bennelong, will the rest of Malcolm Turnbull's party now fall into line, and is his leadership of the party secure now?
Look, Malcolm Turnbull has the very strong confidence and backing of the party room because of the job that he's doing to deliver economic security for Australians and to deliver national security. And across a whole range of areas, we have been getting on and delivering outcomes just in the infrastructure space. For example, this last 12 months has seen enormous progress in relation to Western Sydney Airport, procurement work going underway, a company established, and we'll have earth moving on the site, early stage earth moving before the end of next year. Inland rail, $75 billion we're committed to spend on infrastructure over the next 10 years. Projects all around the country. So in a whole range of areas, we're getting on with the job.
Ed Husick, are you expecting more by-elections next year? We're likely to see, do you not think, that the government will refer a number of Labor members to the High Court? Is that your expectation?
Well, I'm going to leave the Nostradamus playbook aside this weekend, and we'll just see what happens in 2018. I think we are very confident, as we've previously said, about our vetting process. We still think that apart from one MP, all other MPs should be fine.
Apart from the two just been referred to the High Court.
And we will, despite what the coalition has been saying, oh, we've been virtuous and stood forward. No. What happened was they knew they had a problem. Look at the way in which they revealed their issues around citizenship, some of which happened at the tail end of a parliamentary session when someone decides, like Fiona Nash, to stand up and say that they had a problem. And this was hardly virtuous. You had John Alexander sit on concerns that he had while the High Court was going through. Stephen Parry sat on citizenship concerns while the High Court decision on the previous things went through.
Why hasn't he resigned?
You had cases where the government was not up front whatsoever, and you know how nervous they are because this guy keeps interjecting on me in the middle of my responses.
You see, but you can't agree on that point. There is still great uncertainty about a number of members. Look at it from the Australian public's point of view. The frustration that Parliament is obsessed with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a clear frustration from their point of view. It's a frustration from your point of view and from the government's point of view because you can't get your message.
But Andrew, the point I'd make is that we need to deal with this as government, and we have been dealing with it, but we've been getting on and getting things done. And that's what people rightly expect the government to do. They expect us to deal with the issues of the day, but also get on with a long-term agenda. And that is what we're focused on in a whole range of areas. Just look at Medicare and the assurances we've provided in relation to Medicare. You know, there's 21.6 million more bulk billed GP visits in this last year than in the last year of Labor being in government. So in a whole range of areas, we are getting on with the job of government and delivering outcomes for Australians, and that's what people expect us to do.
Someone else always sets the agenda for this government and they have to respond. I mean, the Banking Royal Commission is a classic. You know, those opposite, the government had resisted for ages while bank victims called for some sort of redress and wanted to bring bad banking executives into the public spotlight and get justice. The other side of politics resisted. The coalition resisted on a Banking Royal Commission, and the only time they actually granted one was when the banks told them it was okay to do so. Completely unacceptable. On same-sex marriage, for example, which is this is without doubt a great moment in Australian history, but it had to be done in spite of the coalition, putting in all roadblocks in the way that they did to actually make this happen. And so this is often the case.
That's the Labor agenda, which the government's followed through. What happens next year then? What agenda are you going to push?
Well, you have to wait and see. You can't reveal everything, but I think you can be confident in this. Look at Labor's track record over the last few years. We have come up with long-term solutions to the problems that face the country. We've tackled problems that have been put in the too hard basket for too long, like, for example, tackling negative gearing, and we've set the agenda, be it on Banking Royal Commission or tackling the housing market or other social issues that we think need to be done. We've been leading the way. I think that based on that experience, you can see more of the same going into 2018.
Paul, what's the government's agenda?
Well, I can tell you very clearly what the government's agenda is. It's about continued tax relief, the enterprise tax plan, tax relief for business. 86% of Australians work in the private sector, so it's so important that we can lift the tax burden there.
What about tax relief for individuals?
And the Prime Minister has committed to be in a position to take to the next election tax relief for middle income Australians, so that's a continued priority for us.
But likely when, do you think?
The Prime Minister has committed that that's a priority, so we'll be working on that. We're also obviously working to continue to repair the budget from the chaotic mess that we inherited from Labor. We're working to keep Australians safe and secure, and so in a whole range of ways our agenda is about continuing economic growth, continuing to generate nearly 1,000 jobs a day, keeping Australians safe and secure. We've got a clear plan to do that, and we've been delivering and we'll be continuing to deliver.
There's no doubt that citizenship will also be an issue for both parties.
I think citizenship is a much bigger issue for Bill Shorten, who's got several MPs under a cloud. 2 Labor MPs presently referred to the High Court, one in the Senate, one in the lower house, David Feeney, Bill Shorten's good mate. Turned out he couldn't find his documents, he can't demonstrate that he wasn't a British citizen. When these issues have come up with the coalition, we've dealt with them, we've got on with it, we've had 2 by-elections, we've won both by-elections, and we've got on with governing because that's what the people expect us to do.
And can we also expect a ministerial reshuffle? This time of year, it's always a popular time to mix the chairs around. What are you expecting, perhaps for yourself? Any change?
What I'm expecting is that the Prime Minister will make the decisions that are his entitlement to make, but he does have a great amount of talent to work with. We have a lot of very talented, energetic, committed people in the coalition party room. That's a great position for the Prime Minister to be in as he weighs up these issues and the things that are of concern to Australians, and that's what keeps him busy.
Ed, just very briefly, a bit of a change on your side at all?
Not expecting it, but we'll wait and see. I think we've got a very, in terms of the talent cross front bench and back bench, we've got a lot of energetic people thinking a lot about Australia's longer term future. Unlike the coalition where it's a battle by the front bench to stop the mouth breathers on the back bench dictating policy all the time, I think you've got a very cohesive opposition that is coming up with solid ideas. So, you know, whatever Bill decides, if he decides to go through that process, so be it. But at this point in time, we've got a lot of great options that we can choose from.
All right, Paul Fletcher, Ed Husick, thanks very much for coming in. Happy
Thank
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and
Merry
your viewers.
Christmas.